welcome to For Purpose Podcast. We have Justine in today.
Hi.
Hi,
Deb.
Justine.
How are you?
Thanks for coming in.
Good.
We are running this series of podcasts called the For Purpose Podcast, and we are inviting leaders who are driving for purpose organizations and leaders who are driven by a purpose or many purposes. And we would want to have a chat with you because you are CEO of Rise Network. Could you please give a bit more detail on your experience, on your life, and how purpose has evolved across your life?
Yeah, sure. Look, I don't think anyone would think that I'd be sitting here doing this today. Certainly not my mother. She's quite surprised by what I ended up doing, considering what I was like as a child, which was very shy and introverted. I've done everything from run a pub to run a prison. So it's been a very diverse range of experiences. And I think my purpose has evolved as I've become exposed to more and different situations and circumstances. Certainly from a young age, I was always driven by some form of social justice. I wouldn't have known that's what it was called back then, but I was very interested in animal welfare. So I used to protest against experiments on animals. And in fact, an early highlight was getting arrested for hunt saboteuring in the UK, which was sabotaging fox hunts because it was considered to be cruel. So that was ingrained, but my idea of what a purpose constituted changed. For example, working in the prisons, I was much more exposed to actually what happens for people who probably have a huge set of really unfortunate and unplanned life circumstances where that was not what I thought I would be interested in growing up. Yeah. But when you're exposed to things, you find purpose in a range of things. But it's very much centered around now animal rights, social justice for humans, and increasingly climate change. So as the things come up, I probably wouldn't be super motivated by, say, the potato marketing board or something like that. So it's very much the human interest side or the animal and climate side.
And specifically in social justice, what are the specific areas which you want to work in? So
I think, especially living in Australia, rights of First Nations people. I'm from the UK, and that is not something that we historically are exposed to growing up in the UK. It's much more multicultural, I believe, over there. I'm primarily from East London, so that was more of a focus. But First Nations is something that's very particular to Australia or Canada, something like that, the US. So that to me seems to be a primary matter. But really then anyone who is living with some form of systemic disadvantage that's of no cause of their own. So LGBTI communities, First Nations people with a disability, people with mental health issues, older people, anyone who society sort of disadvantages, there's really no reason.
Yeah, right. And as you have evolved in your, work life, you would find situations when your individual purpose would not have, would have been misalignment with the organizational purpose where you were working.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
You had scenarios, and would you mind sharing
Sure.
the challenges?
Yeah, I think so. I worked for 10 years at Department of Corrective Services, which is where I really got exposed to the prison population and understood, we have so much more in common with each other than difference. And a lot of people, they're a fortnight away from a paycheck, meaning they're homeless or there are mental health issues, family and domestic violence issues. So I felt very aligned with that as I got more exposed to it, thinking it's a social justice issue that needs to be amended or addressed. I think the changes in corrective services meant not so much that I didn't feel aligned with the purpose of rehabilitation and reintegration. It was just how it was done. Yeah. So you can agree with the goals of the organisation, but you can change who you work with or what projects you work on. So where, particularly in corrective services, the pendulum does swing from rehabilitation and reintegration through to custody and containment and backwards and forwards. So depending on the political flavour of the day, or depending if there's something in the news or if there's been an escape from a prison or something, it tends to go right back to punitive. When people are feeling good, it's more supportive. So it's that, where on the pendulum is the environment. So I do not feel comfortable with more punitive regimes or approaches, and are much more aligned with approaches that are about supporting someone to get on with life rather than punishing them for something that's gone wrong.
Is that similar value systems across prison systems in Australia, across states?
It really varies from prison to prison and state to state. A lot of it will depend on the politics of which party is in power.